Arizona Fall League roster preview part 2 here on the call up. He's Jack McMullen. I'm Aram Layton. And this episode is brought to you by the best sunflower seeds on the market. I'm excited. Our Arizona Fall League coverage is going to be sponsored by Chinook Seedery, which we worked with them during All-Star Week. And I mean, that was my first taste, literally, of these seeds. They were kind enough to send us a trillion of every flavor, and we put a good dent into them, and then we ended up giving them all out at All-Star Week, and that was a lot of fun. We're going to be doing the same thing in Arizona. So if you're out here for some games, if you're out there at the Fall League for some ball games, come say hello. Shoot me a DM. I'll let you know, like, in advance. I'll be much more transparent about my schedule this year. I'll have a bunch of seeds in my backpack. I'm going to be like the team mom. I'm excited to just be able to hand out seeds at every ball game, and I'll be ready to go. So if you're at the game or going to one of the ball games, I got some Chinook seeds for you, but our coverage is going to be brought to you by our friends at Chinook Seedery.
Which is awesome because just like us at Just Baseball, Chinook started as like a simple idea and just kind of a concept. You know, we wanted one-stop baseball coverage. They just wanted like a tastier, healthier seed, and it blossomed into way more. That started as a craving, but the founder, Mark, and his team went through iteration after iteration. They found not only a larger seed with like an easier to crack shell and a perfect kernel, but an assortment of flavors that's going to wow you without the salt bomb sensation that a ton of other seeds I feel like give you. I've got a sweet tooth. I'm all in on the cinnamon toast, but you've got original, smokehouse barbecue, hatch chili, dill pickle, Parmesan and pepper, jalapeno ranch, and Bobby Witt Jr.'s favorite, lemon pepper, with his mug on the bag. There is something for absolutely everyone. Chinook seeds are in more stores than ever before, but help us help you in procuring the finest seeds on the face of the earth. Promo code JUSTBASEBALL at checkout at ChinookSeedery.com. You get 10% off your order. That link is also in our episode description. If you're a seed person, trust us. Chinook Seedery small batch sunflower seeds really are the best seeds going. Again, promo code JUSTBASEBALL for 10% off at checkout at ChinookSeedery.com.
Check out that link in the description. And again, if you're in Arizona, come say hello and I'll have some seeds for you. But we're going to break down the second half of these rosters here. And I mean, no shortage of talent on the back half here with Salt River, Scottsdale, and Surprise. I think we got through the top couple prospects on the position player side, of course, with DeVries and Colt Emerson, but there's still a lot more talent to go through here. And it was really like, as I was doing my preparation for this episode, I was thinking like, okay, last episode was so loaded. We talked about so many guys. Like, how many more dogs are going to be in this next episode? And it just has like really hit me on both sides. Like, the pitching continues to just be stronger than I've really remember it ever, or at least for a long time. And then there's going to be plenty of position players we're going to talk about here that I am quite excited to get a look at.
There's intrigue, and we've got the way that it functions, I should say, is like, all right, you've got 6 teams, and you have 5 organizations making up the 6 teams. So we've got 15 teams to go through. And you're right. I think like the overall appeal, you have a couple of top 20 prospects in baseball going out to the Fall League. Those were covered in the front half, but there are a ton of guys. Like, I'm looking at Jack Caglione that we're going to talk about here in a moment. Yeah. The Royals are 4th on this rundown here when it comes to Surprise. But I mean, dude, like, there are names here on every single roster. If you are in Arizona and you get out to the ballpark in the month of October, you're going to see somebody good.
Yes.
Versus
that's
other
a guarantee.
years. And in other years, like, that was not, we couldn't promise you that. You would see somebody interesting, but somebody that is like legitimately a top 50, top 60 prospect in baseball, we can promise you that this go round.
I feel like a broken record, like, but the pitching side, like, there were some games where like I did not see one. There were several games when I would go where I would not see one arm of like major intrigue. Right. But I think if you look at every single staff here, I mean, there's several arms that I think you'd be pumped to see, whether it be starters or relievers, that I just don't think we could say this in the past. So that part's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a more accurate. I think you're going to be able to take more away from the offensive numbers this year. Of course, it's still a hitter-friendly environment. Of course, it's still a lot of pitchers that are either working back off of injury or, you know, are in need of extra work or have command issues. Yeah. But I do think that it is as well-rounded of a league that we've had talent-wise in a while. And I'm also excited because when we start with Salt River, guy that I mentioned on the last episode, I'm actually going to get to go see and play in the Yankees org, which we'll get to in a sec.
Yeah, no doubt. But we're going to start with the Saguaros, and we'll start with the what is it? The Orioles, the Guardians, the Astros, the Royals, and the Rangers. And we're going to start with Baltimore here. Can you take me higher with Creed Willems? He's headed out there, the hoss of minor league baseball. Jake Cunningham, Douglas Hodo III is also going out there. They do not send an infielder, but they send Zane Barnhart, Tyler Birch, Preston Johnson, Juan Rojas, and Houston Roth on the mound. Willems is the name that I'm most familiar with, but if I'm not mistaken, Douglas Hodo III had a very good year. Did he not?
Hodo, it's funny, he would pop up for me, but I don't have like the full season numbers in front of me. Give me 1 second. That was one guy I was not expecting to start with.
No, you're good. I mean, he's 24.
Yeah, he had a solid year, 770 OPS. Kept the strikeout rate under 30% and walks at a really high clip.
And he stole 51 bags.
Oh, he's still 51.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the defense is an interesting wrinkle in this because they kind of moved him in all three. So, I mean, that's a guy that with this archetype, you want to see him go get it in center. So I'm sure that'll be a focus too, and just continuing to develop defensively in center. Like he's going to need to do that. But I mean, to be such a monster on the base paths and to draw walks at a 17% clip, like there's an interesting potential role there as a fourth outfielder, a platoon guy. And I think with Creed, like I'm curious what it looks like defensively, because the bat, like especially for a catcher, that bat's gonna play. He can swing it, but I think there's a lot of concern that hey, he might move off of as I thought, and there's some juice there. Still to this day, I don't know if I've seen a player take a pitch more like a champ than Creed Willems did when we were at the spring breakout game. Like that one would have put me in the dirt for 6 months. But he took it well. But I mean, this guy had a 90th percentile of 106 this past year. Like he's a big dude that can really get into him. He lifts the ball consistently. So if there's any way that he can, prove to be able to stick behind the dish and even be passable there, I mean, there's a lot to like. I think that's a big if. So it's just, that's the number one thing I'm always so excited about in the AFL is seeing these catchers who you wonder if they're going to be able to catch and you get an opportunity. Willem Sneaky's still just 21 years old too, and he won't turn 22 until the middle of next year. So he's got time to develop behind the dish as well. I guess the fallback could be first base, but obviously that'd put more pressure on the bat. But with the 5'11" ability to elevate and the EVs, there's a lot to like here. And he only punched out 20% of the time this season.
Yeah, he's also 5'11". Like that's my worry at first base.
Yeah. And it's not like he's the most agile. So there's a lot of importance here, I think, on developing as a catcher. Houston Roth, I think that's probably the arm I'm most interested in seeing a little bit more of out of this Orioles group. It's a nasty cutter, slider, and split combination with the secondaries. He's older. He's 26, but he threw really well in multi-inning relief in Double-A. And I just think that's another guy that a little bit older in that Orioles system that has plenty of intrigue. Big pitcher's body, 6'3", 220. I think there's definitely big league stuff there with Houston Roth.
Are there any other arms that jump out to you? Like, no, I feel like Creed Willems is really the only guy that had a top 20 prospect in the system intrigue that is headed there for Baltimore.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. We'll go to Cleveland here, and Cleveland sends a fun group here. Cody Huff is going. Chase DeLauder is going to go get more ABs. You also have Milan Tolentino that's headed there. I saw him in high A. Let's say that was 2022. And then the pitching group, Alaska Abney, Dylan DeLucia, who is on that Ole Miss team that won the College World Series, Alan Hernandez, Zach Kent, and Andrew Miziazik. It's headlined by DeLauder. There's no doubt about that. But Tolentino looks like he could serve a big league role at some point. And I think DeLucia and Abney are two guys that make a ton of sense, whether it's multi-inning relief, however it may look. I think DeLucia is probably the one that carries the most weight in terms of intrigue on the mound.
Yeah, on the pitching side, I had DeLucia circled as well. Like it's a decent 4-pitch mix, and there's a chance he could stick as a back end starter. And anyone that has it's a lot of relievers out here, right? So anyone that has 3-4 pitches and they're all decent and has a chance to stick as a starter, I'm always a little bit more intrigued with in this fall league outside of the top-notch guys. Of course, you're going to have some top pitching prospects that get mixed in here, but for the most part, it's a lot of relievers with great stuff that are trying to find it. So having those guys mixed in that have a chance to stick as a starter but don't have a ton of prospect intrigue are really interesting. So I think DeLucia is definitely one of those guys. Alan Hernandez has nasty stuff too. It's upper 90s fastball and slider, and he was nails for Lake County. I think the big thing for him is locating that slider better, and that could be the difference for him to potentially be kind of like a seventh inning guy at the highest level. So I think there's big league bullpen stuff there. I mean, with DeLauder, it's like, can we just see him string together more healthy ABs and just continue to, swing it well? Like when he's on the field, he swings it well. It's just being on the field. And just that's the big part of this whole thing. We're talking about him as a guy that could have, got up to the big leagues this year and helped the Guardians, but unfortunately injuries just continue to get in the way. I still would like to see him get more comfortable in controlling that lower half because I think there's more to be unlocked there. But it'll be fun to just see what he's working on there, or if it really is just a matter of, hey, I like where I'm at in terms of how I'm playing on the field. I just want to be able to play more games and be available. But I mean, that's the guy that I think everyone's really going to be focusing on because I mean, it's just a matter of, can he stay healthy and play extended amount of games? And it was nice that he was able to get back this year, but it's going to be big to see him build on that and perform in the fall league. And then Tolentino, I think it wasn't a great year for him, but I still think there's some intrigue there at 22 years old. Yep. And it's definitely a guy that I just want to see how he moves around the infield. He could be that utility type of player, left-handed bat that kind of plays all over. So kind of a classic candidate to get sent out there too, when you don't have a ton of position players to send.
I think so. The Guardian mold that we talk about a lot is a Rocchio, a Tena. Arias is a bit of a different profile, but again, that's like a smaller in stature middle infielder. I think about Aaron Bracho, who fizzled out in Double-A, but the other type of Guardian player is Stephen Kwan's, like the subdued Stephen Kwan's. And what I mean by that is like a Will Brennan, a Connor Cox. You remember that name? Kokx,
yeah.
A Petey Halpin, guys like that. And I think Tolentino probably clumps into the smaller in stature middle infield grouping, but he certainly is, in one of those buckets where it's like, who are you? Like, what's your offensive identity? It's very Guardian. I just don't know, like, how Guardian it is.
Exactly. And we'll find out. And then Cody Huff, do you know any relation to Sam Huff? Both catchers?
I don't know. Sam Huff is the one that put a ball like 502, right?
Yeah.
In the Rangers system?
Yeah. And he's going to be right in his own backyard. He lives in Scottsdale. So that part is pretty cool. But Huff has some interesting underlying data. I mean, like, hits the ball hard, and I think the contact rates are decent. The surface level numbers weren't as good as the data would suggest, but that's the kind of guy you want to go get more reps out there and see what it all looks like. Patient, 90th percentile of 104, and above average contact rates, or at least average contact rates. Like, there could be something there.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the Houston Astros here, who are the third of the 5 teams that make up the surprise Saguaros. The Astros are sending Colin Price, a catcher. They send Quincy Hamilton, an outfielder. The infielder they send is Austin Deming. In the pitcher group, Jose Fleury, Joey Mancini, Alex Santos II, Nick Swanson, and Alejandro Torres. The floor is yours.
Alex Santos, he was hurt in May, hadn't thrown since, but 3-pitch mix, good athlete on the mound. Could be a back end starter potentially. So I think that's probably the most intriguing of the arms that they are sending there. Colin Price, I don't have much on. I'll circle back there, but Quincy Hamilton is fun. I mean, he's put up some good numbers in the past. It wasn't, I think, as good of a year as I think maybe the Astros were hoping after some of the flashes that he had last year, especially being in the PCL. But I think there's still some intrigue here as a guy that can be a fourth outfielder, platoon type, and can plug in at all 3 spots and is a pretty good athlete. So I think that's another interesting wrinkle in this, being that he's 26, probably want some clarity on, where he fits in long-term. But I think Santos is probably the arm that you really want to see here. Although I do think that there's always going to be some sort of intrigue with these Astros arms. Like, I'm expecting to just be pleasantly surprised by somebody here. And I think that could be Alejandro Torres. Like, he gets above average extension and carry on his fastball, had great whiff numbers on that. And then the sliders plus as well. Opponents hit just 100 against it. So I think Torres could be a guy that kind of stands out here pitching wise and surprises with some of the stuff that he has, and kind of flew under the radar this minor league season, being that, he's a reliever. But I think there's some big league stuff there too.
Was that intentional? I think he could be a surprise playing for surprise.
No, I made the same mistake, or not mistake, but I did the same thing yesterday, and we weren't even talking about surprise. So I was like, oh, that would have worked, but I guess I just keep slipping that one.
No,
But and then Nick Swanson,
mhm.
25-year-old that I actually think could also have that like swingman depth starter type of role, because he's got a good slider, and then the four seamer is low 90s, so he's got to kind of mask that, but has decent shape. And then he's got the curveball and the changeup as well. The changeup is actually really good. I'd like to see him throw that more. But four pitch mix and decent feel to pitch. Like, it's just another guy that gets a lot of weak contact. Could be another emergent arm here that has flown under the radar.
How about that? All right, the Kansas City Royals have a very fun clumping. Kansas City is sending Carter Jensen, the catcher. The story was about Blake Mitchell. There's no doubt about that, but Carter Jensen was a very good like catcher too in that organization
Mm-hmm.
this year. They also send three infielders: Jack Caglione, Brett Squires, Daniel Vasquez, and then the pitchers they send Luinder Avila, who finished the year with Omaha at the AAA level, Brandon Johnson, Chaz Martinez, Shane Panzini, and Anthony Simonelli. Caglione is the headliner, but the Royals sent a pretty intriguing bunch here.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm excited to just see how far Caglione can hit the ball out there, but I also really would love to see him cut down on the chase. And I wonder if that's a big focus here. You don't always see guys that were just drafted, especially that high, get sent straight out to the fall league. I think a big part of this is probably knowing that they want him up at the big league level as soon as possible. And I think for Cags, who's had a very long college season, then played, every professional game possible, including the postseason, and then now is going to go to the fall league. I think for him, it's a race to the big leagues too. He wants to get up there, and I'm sure that there was a conversation of, hey, you want to get up here, you're going to need to cut down on this chase, and let's get you out to the fall league and see if you can show some signs in that regard, so that maybe we can feel more comfortable about aggressively assigning you to Double A. Because everything we saw from Cags in High A, I think showed us that he needs to repeat High A. But if he has a really strong fall league here, cuts down on the chase, and then has a strong spring, I think at that point, maybe you can be a little bit more comfortable with aggressively assigning him to Double A and expediting this process. So I think there's a lot of importance on just what it looks like from him, and if there's some progress there in the swing decisions. But I think that's got to be one of the more surprising and exciting sense, I think, of any team for the fall league, because I don't know, I can't really think of the last time that we saw a guy that had such a long year right in his draft year get sent straight out to the fall league as well.
No, and there was no other first round pick from this year that headed out to the Arizona Fall League that I saw, at least.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know if it's entirely unprecedented, but in recent memory, it is unprecedented for a guy to do this. And I'm with you, man. Like, you see San Francisco sending Eldridge out there because they want to get him to the show as quickly as possible, and they want to give him 20 more games to try and iron out the kinks before he gets there. I think Kansas City is doing a bit slower of a version of that, where they're sending Caglione and they want him to iron out the kinks so he can go to double and triple next year and maybe get to the show at some point.
Exactly.
Versus Eldridge, I'm like, you're just going to break camp.
They might want him there immediately.
Yeah.
Carter Jensen, as you mentioned, like a really positive development in that system, and a catcher, that high school catcher, always a slower burn. And he was 20 years old for the majority of the season. So to see what Jensen did on the offensive side, and he just continues to develop on the defensive side of things as well. He's a good athlete, but I think that's a big reason they want him to just keep getting those reps there defensively. But this is, I think, one of those classic, hey, things kind of came together for you this year. Let's keep building on that. Let's keep just hammering home whatever clicked for you. I mean, an 809 OPS as an age 20, catcher going into 21, and that was with majority of his games in high A, but he played a good portion of games in Double A as well, and continued to look solid there. So I mean, this is a guy now that what's interesting with Jensen is, with Blake Mitchell there, with their catching situation the way that it is, where Salvi, you still have him there, but then you also have Fermin. I feel like this is kind of one of those, not intentional. I'm sure they want Jensen to get reps, but this is another one of those instances where I think a lot of scouts of other teams are going to see Carter Jensen. Here's a guy that I thought would get moved at the deadline potentially. I know had been floated in some talks. Like, if he performs well, which I expect him to, given that he elevates consistently, has a good feel to hit, has a good approach, and I mean the EVs jumped this year. strong performance in the fall league, when the Royals are looking to maybe make a trade in the offseason, or, when that time comes around again, and hopefully they're competitive again next year, a lot of teams are going to be a lot more familiar with a much more improved Carter Jensen, who looks like a totally different player than he looked like, a year and a half or 2 years ago.
Yeah. Luinder Avila is a name that jumped out to me because he's in the mid 90s, like low to mid 90s, I know, but this guy's been an innings eater for a long time. And he's a 22-year-old, I think, 22 or just turned 23, that has gotten up to AAA at this point for a start, and he made a postseason start. Yeah, he's a young 23, turned 23 in August. But the fact is, this guy had an 100-inning season in low A, had an 100-inning season in high A, and then just threw to a sub-4 across about 90 innings in double A. They're sending a real starter out there. Yeah. And I don't know like what the room looks like in Kansas City next year, but he seems like decent AAA depth when it comes to starting pitching.
No doubt. And I think that's a good point, because I think that's pretty much the only guy that's going to be mostly stretched out there. But in short spurts, Chas Martinez as well. Mm-hmm. Intriguing arm. He was in Quad Cities for the entire season. And I think when you look at some of the whiff numbers, though, across the board, like, he's got 4 pitches he's comfortable throwing. It's mostly fastball, curveball, and both of those pitches perform quite well for him. And the fastball's got life to it at like 93, 94, and the curveball tunnels well off of it with bite. But he's also mixing a slider and a changeup. Opponents at 211 against him this year, and I think there's some impressive stuff if he can just throw more strikes. Another one of those classic, like, got to be in the zone. But for him, what's interesting is he had stretches where he was filling up the zone, and then there's stretches where just it was walk, walk, walk. So I think it's just being able to duplicate those stretches. He's a lefty that's 6'4". So, I mean, he could be another fun relief option here for the Royals that I think just needs to hone in on the command a little bit more.
Last but not least, on the Saguaros, you've got the Texas Rangers, and the Rangers are sending Alejandro Osuna, who's probably the headliner, and then you've got Max Acosta and Cody Freeman to round out the position players, and the 5 arms are sending Mark Church, Skylar Hales, Leandro Lopez, Josh Steffen, and Avery Weems. Osuna's the big name?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably their minor league player of the year this year, with the way that he swung it. And Maximo Acosta, man, like, he looked like he was going to be another one of those international free agent disappointments. And I think he really took a big step forward this past season. And I know he didn't light it up. The guy had 285 with a 771 OPS. And I mean, just only struck out 13% of the time, started to hit the ball in the air a little bit more. And he can move all over the infield. I think, they're hoping he can stick it short. It's being that he's still just 21, like, you can keep getting those reps there. But I mean, this was a guy that I was, again, pretty concerned about it being kind of the latest story of, it's not really going to pan out. And I think there were some positive things that he can build on and, see what it looks like, going into next year. I was very surprised to see him settle in the way that he did at AA and actually be pretty darn solid there. So I'm hoping that he can build on that, and they might actually end up having a piece here with the Rangers. But I think Osuna just having the monster year that he had and trying to build on that. And I think there's plenty to like it with the flashes that he has shown in the past. And seems like he took a big step forward this year overall as well. And then on the pitching side, Mark Church, like, that's a plus, maybe plus changeup. Like, really? That is a nasty, nasty changeup. If I'm not mistaken, he got up for a cup of coffee at the end of the year, right?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure, but I can check that right now.
Yeah, he did. There we go. He got up for 1 inning and tossed a scoreless inning and got a strikeout in there. And Mark Church, I mean, that guy's got big league stuff, and we got to see him throw 1 inning at the big league level to finish out the year there for the Rangers. But I mean, it's a fastball that averaged 96 miles per hour this year. Doesn't have the most life to it, doesn't have the best shape, but at 96, that's okay when you have a plus slider. And he dominated with that slider this year. Throws it about 45% of the time at 87 miles per hour, and opponents hit just $140 against it. So with that slider, I think he's going to be a big league reliever and could have a big league role for a long time. 6'3", athletic on the mound. I'm excited to see what it looks like with Church as well.
Cool. I'll get excited then too. We are going to go from the surprise Saguaros to the Salt River Rafters in a moment. Before that, quick break.
I had one more for you. Sorry. Skylar Hales also with the Rangers. I forgot I had him in my notes as well. Funky 3/4 release with an upper 90s heater and a slider that plays from that slot. I think that could be another really fun arm as well. But cool. Sorry. Now on to the next team.
You're good. Salt River is comprised of the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies, the Minnesota Twins, the New York Yankees, and the Washington Nationals. We'll start with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Arizona is sending Christian Robinson. Interesting. They are also sending Gino Groover and Tommy Troy. Very interesting. And Philip Abner, Kyle Ament, You Mean Lin, my guy, Alfred Murillo, and Dylan Ray. They're going. This position player trio is fun with a capital F.
Yeah. I mean, Christian Christian Robinson, excuse me, is an interesting story, obviously. Yeah. And just seeing him get the opportunity to play a full season now, it wasn't great. He punched out a lot, but he also walked at a good clip and hits the ball really, really hard. So I think this is kind of that last shot to show something going into next year. This is probably more of a clarity thing for the D-backs, just kind of wanting to know what they've got here. And given how much time he missed, I think just wanted to give him a little bit more runway to get his feet back under him. But I mean, there's the tools are there. It's just, will he hit enough? And you don't want to give up on a guy too quickly when he had such a big layoff. So it'll be interesting on that front. But with Tommy Troy, it was just a lost year for him, right? Because of the injury, and we didn't really get to see him play much. And it felt like once he finally got back, it was mostly just trying to get his feet back under him again. So it felt like he didn't totally get into any kind of rhythm. It started to look really good at the end of the year, though. And I think that was where he started to maybe find that rhythm, and then the season ends. So that's why we have the fall league here. So just being able to build on that, still just 22 years old, right? A top 100 prospect for us. And I mean, the speed, the feel to hit, he's tapping into the more, power in terms of the EVs and starting to elevate a little bit more. So I haven't been able to see him in person since the Cape Cod League. So I'm eager to see the glove as well. I know they played him a lot more at second, and I've always kind of thought he was going to move off a short, and I think where they play him here in the fall league will be a little bit telling. Are they going to start to really transition him to second base, or are they going to hammer the reps at shortstop and kind of get him to keep building there?
Yeah. Pitching wise, You Mean Lin is obviously the name that jumps out because You Mean Lin had that amazing start to the 2023 season. Has he ticked up from 88 or no?
A little bit. A little bit.
And maybe also he's 89, 90.
Also Gino Groover too. I forgot to mention him. What a finish to the year for him. And this seems like one of those examples of, hey, you probably wish the season didn't end, so we're not going to let it end for you. Final 20 games. I was shocked at how well Groover handled the Double-A promotion as well. And in his final 20 games, 1,071 OPS. He walked 9 times, struck out just 11 times, and hit 7 home runs. All of a sudden, this guy's pulling the ball in the air. What did we talk about when he was starting to play well? I was like, he needs to slug more because it's a third base profile or maybe second base. Well, now he's starting to slug more. So I think that's really exciting in terms of a development there. But to Lin, still just 21 years old. He averaged 91 with the fastball this year. So that side of things is good, but it's just a lot of spraying at times. I think he did a good job of getting that walk rate down to 8%, but I don't know if he really even knows himself in terms of what pitches he trusts the most. It just seems like it's different every day. Every time we see him, sometimes it's the changeup, sometimes it's the curveball, sometimes it's more the cutter or the slider. I don't know if there's really a rhyme or reason here to which pitches he truly trusts. It seems like the changeup has the edge, but even then he'll get away from it and start spinning more certain outings. So I think just trying to figure out what that identity fully is and build off of that.
Got you. Any other arms that jump out to you in this grouping?
Alfred Murillo has a chance for big league bullpen stuff. I mean, it's a good fastball and slider combination. So that's just another guy that I think could be in a big league bullpen. But that's probably about it on that front.
Got you. Okay. Let's go to the Colorado Rockies now then. The Rockies, they're sending some pitchers that are pretty darn intriguing, but they do send an outfielder in Juan Guerrero. The infielders that they sent, Skylar Messenger and Ryan Ritter, the former Kentucky Wildcat, I think. And then on the mound, they send McCade Brown, Gabriel Hughes, the former first-round pick that was TJ'd up, Evan Justice, Michael Prosecki, who was, I think, an early round reliever, and then Carlos Torres as well. The Rockies are sending guys that could factor into the big league fold at some point, next year or the year after.
Yeah, well, we'll start on the offensive side of things, and Ritter, really solid year, good glove. Looks like a guy that could be a very, very solid utility piece. I think they're hoping that the offense can tick up a little bit more to where you can dream on an everyday role because of how good the glove is. But ultimately, I think you feel confident that this could at least be a big league bench piece with the value that he brings you with the glove, and put up some decent numbers in Hartford. Juan Guerrero, not a guy that I've been able to see a ton of, but Sneaky had a very underrated year. He hit 303 this season. And I know the field of hit, I think, was something that it really shined through even at the AA level, getting called up there, but playing, I think, the majority of his games in high A this year. But in zone contact rate at 86%, the chase rate, he was able to cut that down a little bit. The question is how much power is going to be in there. The EVs are not great. It's a 303, 342, 399 slash line here, and a 90th percentile of 100 on the dot. So how much more power is going to be there, because there's a guy that probably profiles in a corner and is already pretty much playing all of his games in left and right field. So contact oriented in a corner doesn't usually go that way unless, you're Stephen Kwan or, you're an elite defender and the bat to ball is there. So it'll just be interesting to see, if he can tap into more power, or if they try to get him a little bit more run in center, or how they try to get him out of this tweener profile offensively. But I mean, it's still a really solid year for Guerrero.
Yeah, you need you need some sort of exceptional tool where it's like, yeah, it can look like Quan, it can also look like Jake McCarthy. Otherwise, you got to really slug in a corner, and he's probably not Quan or Jake McCarthy at this point, but we'll see what he can blossom into. Ritter is an interesting one to send, because Ritter was drafted as a high floor guy, and I know that we've talked to some people that really like Ryan Ritter and like what comes with him. He screams utility guy. He screams shortstop, second base, may fill in at third as well, and just kind of bounce around.
100%. And then Gabriel Hughes. I mean, I think if you're a Rockies fan, you got to be excited about just the fact that he's back on the mound and just to be tuned in to see how he's throwing. From what I was able to gather, he's been looking really good on the backfields as he's been building back up, and has been sitting more 93, 95, which he was more 92, 94 before. And the feel for the secondaries has been there. So this is a guy that was a first-round pick, right? He's 6'4", 220, put him some great numbers in college. Now just getting healthy. I mean, if he looks anything like he looked like when he was a first-round pick, and there was even stretches where he was good prior to the surgery, and then it just really blew up at points, and you wonder if the arm issues had something to do with that. I mean, this really makes that pitching outlook in Colorado all of a sudden really fun. So, I mean, I still have a lot of hope in him being able to develop into a decent starting pitcher, and it's going to be fun to just see him work back in low stress environment, and having already been throwing, I think, pretty consistently on the backfields. He's going to get in there with a little bit of momentum, and I think should be feeling pretty good. And then Evan Justice, I think he's had a cup of coffee in the big leagues already. I saw him all the way back on the Cape. He's funky, lefty, 6'4", 205, and the Rockies love those types of guys. So I think he's going to get plenty of opportunities. He's got a pretty good field to spin it.
He went the other way, by the way. Prosecki was a college reliever at Louisville, and the Rockies turned him into a starter, and he was awesome in 2023 in low A ball. 21 starts, 109 innings, at a 2.72 ERA. But it looks like he got clipped on the start of the year, worked his way back, and was throwing short, 48 innings across 14 appearances.
Yeah, he didn't really make his first start until July 5th. And then from that point forward, two starts in low A where he made mincemeat of the competition there. It was 1 earned run in 11 innings. He struck out 17 and then kept throwing pretty well. I mean, there's a couple blips in the radar in high A and some tough environments to throw in out there, but a lot of swing and miss, it's interesting. 6'3" lefty, like the in zone whiff numbers are pretty gaudy, even with the fastball and also the curve and slider. Like there's some intrigue here for sure. I'm glad you mentioned him. And I mean, over the course of the season, struck out 35% of batters. Like I'm interested to see what that looks like, because I haven't really watched him pitch much at all. So another just funky lefty that the Rockies just seem to be going all in on those types.
I remember watching him at Louisville out of the pen, and I was like, oh, good reliever. Like, wonder where he ends up. There are a couple guys at Louisville, like Prosecki was one of those guys. Michael McAveen, do you remember that name? Was a
Yeah.
pretty early round pick of the Cubs. I was like, good reliever. Let's see where he ends up. And unfortunately, it just, doesn't really work. I feel like you have to be a very, very good reliever in college to make it as a reliever in the show, because there are so many converted starters from college that end up in the bullpen and absolutely disgusting. But like, I'm thinking about, Ben Joyce was obviously a college reliever that made it. Seth Halverson is probably a recent example of a college reliever that made it, and he transferred to Tennessee. But Prosecki, he could make it in the reverse way, where he's college reliever into big league starter, which fascinates me.
It almost seems like that is happening more than the other way around, where it's just, or not other way around, where it's to your point of like college reliever, big league reliever. I almost feel like that doesn't happen as much now, where we're seeing college reliever because he couldn't really hone it in, and then ends up finding the command a little bit more, or maybe the team that drafts him says, oh no, this is a guy that we can make a starter. And now they end up having success. I almost feel like we see that more than reliever, than also getting to the big leagues as a reliever,
I think so.
Unless it's like an absolute battle of a journey. Cause to your point, like failed starters are going to get an opportunity out of the bullpen probably before you draft a college reliever to just, kind of climb up through the minor leagues as a college reliever, unless they're freakazoids like Ben Joyce. I think Kevin Kopps is a perfect example of that.
Kopps,
you're not going to get better big or college relievers than that, and he's still battling to get to the show.
He won the freaking, good that this is a Chinook episode, like, because Chinook is the presenting sponsor of the Golden Spikes. He won the freaking Golden Spikes as a reliever, and like he's stalling out in Double-A right now. How did that happen?
Yeah. It shows you how hard it is. And also like how good these starters can be when you put them in a bullpen.
Right. Exactly. Next team that we're going to talk about is the Minnesota Twins. And the Twins are sending Kalai Rosario, the outfielder, who's going to hit a ball 121 miles an hour, but it might be the ball that he makes contact with over the course of the given month. We'll see what happens. You also have Danny De Andrade, who's going, Ben Ross as well in the pitching group, Cade Bragg, Jacob King, Devin Kirby, Jack Noble, Liam Rocha. I've never heard of any of the pitchers.
I have one note.
You have one note on the pitchers?
I have Devin Kirby knuckleball alert.
Cool. All right. It's awesome. Yeah, there's your Twins pitching update for the AFL.
Yeah, a couple of these guys might be great. We don't have enough time to get
there's no
the 4-1-1 on every. Yeah. That's what I told you. Like, if we missed something, let us know. Like, there's too many relievers here. But I got a Devin Kirby knuckleball alert. That's okay. What I'm here for, and I'll be sure to get a couple live looks at the knuckleball.
Cool.
But wasn't Rosario was there last year? No,
I think Rosario was there last year.
I'm almost positive I saw him last year.
The thing on Kalai Rosario, and I know that we've talked about this, is like massive juice, insane EVs that he will put up sometimes. But it's a lot like Junior Severino with more mobility. If you're familiar with Junior Severino, and I feel like the Twins fans that are listening to this are familiar with Junior Severino. Severino was like a 40 homer threat in 2023. I saw him take a Skeen Splinker 114 to left center in Indianapolis. But then I watched 5 days. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I feel like that's kind of Kalai Rosario.
Yeah, and what's interesting with Rosario is he's so patient now too, which helps and takes some pressure off. And when a guy runs a 90th percentile of 108.5 miles per hour, I'm going to send him to the fall league back-to-back years and just hope something sticks. He's still just 22 somehow as well, and he didn't turn 22 until July. So there's still reason to be patient. He did keep the strikeout rate a decimal point under 30%, but the 55% ground ball rate's the big problem too. Like he was hurt, so I'm maybe that was part of it. Right, he only played 69 games this year.
Yeah,
he did hit 10 home runs in that span, but like he's got to elevate more consistently if he wants to have a shot to be able to get to the big leagues and stay there. Because he's going to whiff. So if you're going to whiff, how often are you going to put the ball over the wall when you make contact? It's got to be real often, and hard to do that when more than half of your batted balls are on the ground.
Yeah. Danny De Andrade, was he a big ticket IFA guy? I feel like I've heard that name before.
I don't think so. I feel like I thought he was a draft guy. I might be wrong on that, but you can confirm that while I dig up Ben Ross's year as well.
Yeah,
not a great year from Ben Ross. But Double-A shortstop, I think another one of those where you can probably see the utility type where they played him in center a little bit. They played him a lot at short. That was the primary position, but mixed in at third, mixed in, kind of all over. So I think they're hoping that he can be that, utility and set multiple premium spots and just see what it looks like. But, struggled with swing and miss and posted just a 626 OPS.
Score one for Jack, $2.2 million IFA guy, Danny De Andrade.
Good call, Jack.
Yeah, I know. 2021 IFA cycle. Had a feeling. There we go.
You definitely do have a better memory for the IFA signees, I think, than I do. With the names that pan out and don't pan out. Like you've got a pretty good recall on that front.
Dude, like I've seen so many of them play at some level, whether it was like short season ball or high A or triple A, and I'm like, remember Leonel Valera? I liked him. and it's just guys like that, and it's like I like you, but
and the broadcasters, like you got to mention the guy that signed for $4 million. Like,
yeah, no doubt, man.
So yeah, and then when you mention it on the call in high A, and you're like, my goodness, how did this guy get $4 million? I feel like that's going to be singed in your brain.
Right. Or it's like, how did this guy only get $20,000?
Exactly.
Like that is the thing that kind of jumps out to me. I remember the extremes and Danny De Andrade. I'm not sure if I saw him anywhere because, I mean, he's gone DSL to complex to low A to high A and OPS 688, 704, 750, 692 in 29 games. So like he hasn't been good, but he also played 105 games in low A. Aside from that, he hasn't played more than 50 games at any other level.
Yeah, he was hurt pretty much from May onward. I think his last game he played was on May 15th, for Cedar Rapids. So it could have got things going. Yeah, he had a 693 OPS in those 29 games and then season cut short. So we never really got to see if this age 20 season here was one that he could take a step forward after last year. So, and he was actually swinging it pretty well over the final 10 games before going down. In those 10 games, he hit 308, 372, 436. I know it's a very small sample, but unfortunate time to get hurt. Contact rates are pretty good in that span. So maybe this was the year where he was going to take a step, in the right direction, and then unfortunately got hurt. So he has a chance to do that now in the fall league.
Yep. Go to the Yankees here. We've got two more teams that comprise the Salt River Rafters. And the New York Yankees are sending Rafael Flores, who was amazing this year. Catcher in the Yankee system, Garrett Martin is going as well, an outfielder. The infielder they're sending is Caleb Durbin, who I know Aram is the president of his fan club. And then there are three pitchers that they're sending, Harrison Cohen, Jackson Fristow, and Ryan Harvey. The hitting trio, cool, man. Like Durbin and Flores, I feel like you're going to be going to more Rafters games than you would otherwise.
Dude, Durbin, I don't know how good he's going to be in the big leagues, but Caleb Durbin's a big leaguer, and I love the big leaguers that no one even pays attention to, and I feel like that's exactly what Caleb Durbin is.
Can you give me a comp?
A comp for Caleb Durbin?
Yeah,
Javier Sanoja.
Okay, sure, yeah, like that's great.
No, but seriously, like he really has a phenomenal feel to hit. I think sneaky pull side pop. It's not going to be anything crazy, but he does a great job of pulling the ball in the air when he needs to. Guy walks more than he struck out this year in AAA. I mean, that's not that easy to do at that level. And I mean, mixed in 10 home runs, a 90% in zone contact rate. Like he's just a scrappy player that I think you would love to have on your bench. And the fact that he leaned into the versatility more this year, they played him. Second base has always been his primary position, but he filled in at short on occasion. He played some third, he played some left. Like I love him as just like those a bench piece. And I just love finding those like prospects that aren't on the top 30 list that will have a big league career. Like I think that's a way to find a lot of value. And he did miss some time this year, only played 89 games. So I think he's going to tear it up out there. I really do. He's just way more polished than a lot of the hitters that are going to be out there. What other hitters we got here for the Yanks? It's
Rafael Flores is the big other one. 122 games this year between high A and double A. He split the year pretty much evenly. This guy in 122 games, 21 homers, hit 279 with an 875 OPS. He's
got major power, like major power. And he's going to need to because he's, probably going to move to first base, but they want to see if this guy can catch. And this is just another example of, hey, like if he can just be passable as a catcher, my goodness, like you might have a monster here because 90th percentile exit velocity of 108 miles per hour. He was able to keep the strikeout rate in check. I mean, for how much power he has, 23 homers, to keep the strikeout rate at 26%, offset that with a 13% walk rate. The Yankees really caught him a lot, like a lot. It was pretty surprising. Usually, with younger, bigger guys, I guess he's not as young, being 23 years old, but still, even like a guy with legitimate prospect intrigue, and I think the Yankees are pretty excited about him. You don't usually see those guys catch like 7 games in a row. Usually you see a DH mixed in there, things like that. Down the stretch of the season, he was catching as much as anybody. And really, they were only mixing in first base like once every 7-8 games. Wow. So they clearly want him to really get the reps back there. He struggled to limit the run game down the stretch, and that'll be something to monitor. And I think he can get a little bit stiff back there. But I mean, when you got that kind of power, there's a big league role for him if he does have to move to first with the ability offensively. But if he can just even want to see if the defense gets any better or where they're at in their progress. So that's going to be a catching snob, I think, for a lot of this AFL stint.
I'm excited to see you be a catching snob here, but the Yankee thing, like I would love to see Ben Rice or Rafael Flores be able to catch 2 days a week. Like Wells is the guy, right? And you have now an assortment of 2 guys that were amazing offensively in the minor leagues in, Flores, and it's early and we'll see if he repeats in 2025, but Ben Rice got to the show as a hitter. If he can catch just a little bit and be a backup catcher, that's not like an empty spot. And I'm not calling Trevino an empty spot right now by any stretch, but Trevino is going to go at some point. Wells is going to be the catcher. Who can be a fill-in first baseman? Who can be a fill-in DH? And who can be the backup catcher?
100%. And I think also it allows you when you're using your bench here where you can pinch hit for a guy in a certain spot and then not have to worry about burning your other catcher. And it gives you a little bit more versatility because you could carry a quote unquote third catcher. That's also your platoon guy at first base or DH or whatever. The other interesting thing is the Yankees have been very good. I'm glad you mentioned Wells and Rice. Wells, I think, has been a developmental masterclass by the Yankees. And I think you got to give Wells the credit, but just to see the way that his catching has improved. I mean, this was a guy that a lot of people were very eager to move off of the position. And now he's accumulating WAR because of his defense at the highest level and playing really, really good defensive catcher overall. And then Ben Rice, I mean, that was a guy that didn't even play in college because of 2 of his seasons being wiped out due to COVID in the Ivy League and was extremely raw defensively. And he made major strides. The Yankees didn't need him at catcher, but he made major strides defensively behind the dish as he was able to get reps professionally. So the Yankees have a good track record of being able to develop these catchers. And I think that's why they want to give Flores every single opportunity. And it'll be cool to see, if they're able to do it again here with Flores. And if they do with him, I mean, with the plus raw power, it could be fun.
Also, the number of the bat first catchers that the Yankees had in the minor league system at one point at the same time is astounding. Like Austin Wells, Ben Rice, Rafael Flores, Agustin Ramirez. And this is all while like the end of the Gary Sanchez era is unfolding in New York.
And that's them betting on their ability to develop these catchers, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to find value because people are gonna say, "Oh no, he can't stick there." So you're gonna ignore the bat, and you're gonna say, "Oh, he's a first baseman." And the Yankees say, "Hey, we can actually make this guy decent there." Now the value goes up a ton. So because when you don't catch, you end up probably at first, and it becomes so much more of a pressure on the bat. So I mean that is an interesting conversation. Like I think we're gonna do some off-season episodes of like approaches that we've picked up on from like different organizations, and I that's definitely one that the Yankees have found a ton of value with that approach. Carlos LaGrange,
is he going
6'7"?
He wasn't on the initial release.
I mean, I see him I'm on the website right now.
If he's on the website, that means he's going.
What do you think?
Get ready to learn Arizona, buddy.
Well, 6'7"?
Yeah.
I mean, that we talked about tall pitchers out here. He's going to be up there with just about anybody, 21 years old.
Yeah.
It's a 97 mile per hour, like average is 97. Good slider. It's just all about the command for him. But surprise, surprise for a 6'7" right-hander. But he missed a majority of the season, got back at the end, threw a little bit. So, I think just being able to build those innings up and see if he can start filling up the zone more. Harrison Cohen, I think this is a very underrated arm as well. He missed the start of the year and is a reliever. But I actually got to watch him have his kind of coming out party as a pro prospect on the Cape, where I think he was pitching at GW at that time, like George Washington.
Yeah,
And
he was a colonel. I
Colonel,
don't know. I'll Google it while you talk.
he just stood out there. It's like kind of shorter guy, compact, fastball just explodes out of his hand. And I mean, the results were there, and he's really started to solidify himself as an intriguing prospect. Yankees picked him up, and he's been really good out of the pen. After that late start, shoved in high A, 0.75 ERA in 24 high A innings if you include the postseason. You get 17 inches of vert from a 5'6" release height, and can get up to the mid 90s. So Cohen's going to be a big league reliever. I do believe that.
They are the George Washington Colonials.
That's I
two letters off. Like Colonel. I hate that Colonel and Colonial look very similar. Like it's Colonel, it's not Colonel.
Yeah, that does always mess with my head.
Yeah, it just makes me upset. But
yeah, it just doesn't even make sense. But Ryan Harvey, another hoppy fastball guy, decent slider, changing curve. Maybe it could be a guy that could go multiple innings. And then Jackson Fristow. The big reason why I'm rooting for Jackson Fristow is he's from Paducah, Kentucky.
Oh, nice.
My girlfriend's family has had like a lake house that has been like passed down for a long time in Paducah, Kentucky. I'd never really been out in Kentucky, and there's not a lot of people there, and there's not a lot of things there. So if there's a Major League Baseball player coming out, he might be the first. I don't know, but I'm gonna root for anybody from Paducah, Kentucky, because that's very remote. And that's very cool, especially like to pitch for the New York Yankees. But he's 6'4" and actually has some intriguing stuff, and I think also could be a big league reliever. And then one more really interesting one, Luis Pacheco. They signed this dude out of the Mexican League like this year.
Cool.
So those are always the fun stories in the fall league as well, right? Where hey, we just signed this guy out of another league, and we just want to see what we've got here. Yeah. He really impressed immediately. They quickly pushed him up to Double A. Like it was a few appearances at the complex, then he goes to Low A, and then they're quickly like, all right, let's get you up to Double. And he looked really good there too. He was 95 to 97 a lot of the year, and he's still just 25 years old. So really turned some heads in the Mexican League, and clearly turned some heads when he got here stateside, and already earned a look in the Arizona Fall League. So this could be a guy with some helium as well.
I refuse to let your Paducah small town narrative go by when they have a nonstop flight from Charlotte, North Carolina. They have an airport. That's a real place.
Oh man. Okay.
I'm kidding. It might be population 1,500. I have no idea. There are some weird places that O'Hare flies to. There are some weird places that Charlotte flies to. You have an American Airlines hub, like they might just be able to land in a cornfield.
I think they do.
Yeah. I'd believe it. So good on him, man. Maybe they throw him maybe they have a parade after he makes his big league debut.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Would you go? You got to go.
I probably would.
You got to go to that.
Like Kentucky right there.
Yeah, Paducah. Last but not least on the Salt River rafters is the Washington Nationals. And the Nats are sending Maxwell Romero, a catcher. They're sending Bobby Barrels, Robert Hassel III. They are also sending Caden Wallace, who was acquired in the Hunter Harvey deal at the deadline. They're also getting Matthew Cronin, Michael Cuevas, Dustin Syons, Chase Zaleski, and Luke Young out there. You have something. You said you have 5 minutes at least on every pitcher here.
This is another one of those where I got very little on these Nats pitchers. Max Romero, the guy you're just gonna send out there and see if the bat can come along a little bit more. But I mean, he put up a 90th percentile, 106. So just if he can make some more contact, that'll always be great. Caden Wallace, just one of those examples of a guy, hey, you acquired him late in the season, want to get a little bit more of an idea of what you've got there. I think a higher floor guy, but it was a pretty disappointing year overall. I think I was expecting a little bit more in the slug department for a guy that's probably going to have to play third base. And you're going to want to see more than a 354 slug. The EVs aren't bad. Like it's a 90th percentile, 103. So if he can elevate a little bit more and find a way to tap into a bit more, that'd be great. But he also only played 56 games this year. So maybe injuries were affecting him on that front. He did keep the strikeout rate in check still. So just looking for him to prove that injuries were a big reason why he struggled. Injuries plus getting traded is really tough. So just to have a positive I think trend going into next year would be great. And then I'll ask you a question here.
Ooh.
What do you want to see from Robert Hassel in this fall league? Like, is there anything that's going to change your tune or give you some optimism on Robert Hassel, who just turned 23 years old and now is getting his second taste of the fall league?
I am excited to see him defend. That's not what I want to see. I'm excited to watch him play center field. It is incredibly smooth out there in center. And I think that he can be a fourth outfielder if he starts to find right center and left center. If he finds right center and left center in a place where the ball's going to carry, I'm okay with that. And I'm not talking put it over fences. I'm talking like, let's get it to the wall on 2 hops. Let's see if you can play gap ball a little bit and hang out around the lines. I would love to see him hit line drives and pop a 101, pop a 102. Like, that's what I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe how bad it was in AAA. You know, I thought he would have survived a little bit more. His final 20 games of the season hit 149, but I'm with you. Like, okay, it's clear that he's not going to slug. And we're hoping, okay, well, what if he taps into more power, you know, when he was really hitting well?
His frame is very, very similar to what it was when he was in low A.
I think he's got to lean into the bat to ball thing. So, like, is there a way that you can be more contact oriented, slot the ball around the yard, patient, walk, and then just play good defense? I think that's the best way that he's going to carve out a legitimate big league role now moving forward, which is depressing because we knew how exciting he was out of the gate. But if there's a big league role to be filled here, I agree with you. It's going to be gap to gap, get on base, don't strike out, and lean into the defense and speed thing.
No, I think he should, get Michael Ciani's contact and say, hey, how did you just get a year of big league service? Like, let's figure this out.
Yeah, because he's got more upside than Ciani too, right? So if you could just do the Ciani thing, absolutely.
Totally does. And like, there is a Michael Ciani adjacent on, I feel like, every single roster, dude. Like G1 Bay in Pittsburgh is doing the same darn thing. And, there are guys that were bouncing back and forth in Chicago. And like, Pete Crow Armstrong, it's nice that he is way more than that. But, at worst, he was up there as a fourth outfielder and elite defender when he was really struggling at the beginning of his big league career. So, I think that there can be a role here. I just feel like we need to start to see his perception of the role change a little bit. And I hope that we can get to see that for the next month or so. Anything else on the Nats?
That's it.
Okay. Before we get to the Scottsdale Scorpions, I want to tell you about our friends over at GameTime, because it's all about live events. We know that some of the best memories are made at a marquee sporting event, right? Now, GameTime can help you out with their new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even faster and easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Simple process. Open up an event. I literally did this yesterday, grabbing wild card tickets for Brewers Mets, and it was Brewers TBD at the time that I did it. But I see 3 tiers of deals fed to me off the top. I see super deals, see amazing deals, I see great deals. I actually went with a great deal because I wanted to like sit 100 level, and I just found one in the corner, and it was like perfect. Yeah, why not just do that? So it was awesome. Like, why would I not go all in on that? Because you have the opportunity to essentially curate your deal on Game Time Picks around your priorities. So go check out Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You get panoramic seat views before checkout. You get their lowest price guarantee, which means if you find a better deal in the same section and row elsewhere, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. And they cover your purchases with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL, all caps, one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. You go.
JUSTBASEBALL.
Perfect for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it?
Game time.
It's game time. Let's talk about the Detroit Tigers, who are one of the 5 teams that make up the Scottsdale Scorpions. It is the Tigers, the Mets, the Pirates, the Giants, and the Blue Jays. And the Scottsdale Scorpions will be receiving Tyrone Lorenzo, the catcher, who was a deadline deal. He was essentially the headliner for Jack Flaherty in that return. They also get to see Josue Briseño and Peyton Graham. Peyton Graham, the former second-round pick. Briseño, a guy that had a ton of prospect intrigue, I think, coming into the 2024 season. They are sending Reiner Castillo, Wilmer Flores, Jake Miller, Eric Silva, and CJ Wines. Lorenzo, you are fired up to see Lorenzo.
Well, especially with the way he finished the year, right? I mean, 21 years old, turned 21 in July, and final 30 games of the season at 301, 450, 524. I mean, as a 975 OPS, and he walked more than he struck out at the high A level. So, I mean, that part is really fun. And then just another one of those catchers where it's, okay, well, how's the glove going to come along? And a lot of people want to move him off the position. Can he develop there? I haven't gotten to see him in person catch. So that's another one to the list of the offensive-oriented catchers that are going to get more reps behind the dish there that I'm very excited about. Josue Briseño is similar in that regard. Just got to get a live look at him and right down the road here, actually, in the postseason. Nice. I was there for JJ Weatherholt, to be honest, but Briseño, he's just so big. And I do wonder if he's just too big for the position. But the bat has some intrigue there. It wasn't, I think, the year that a lot of people were hoping for, and he was kind of a popular breakout candidate, to your point. And a lot of people were excited about him. He started to play a lot more first base at the end of the year. I don't know if that was injury related or what it was, because he only played 45 games this season, and the injury is a big reason why he didn't actually have that breakout. But there's some good underlying batted ball markers, and I'm just fascinated by what their long-term plan may be with him. Like, are they going to try to get him back behind the dish a little bit more, or is it okay, lean into the first base thing and really try to develop as a hitter? But 6'5", 200 with the feel to hit that he's flashed and a good approach, like, there's definitely a lot to like there in terms of the offensive upside.
Yeah. How about Peyton Graham? Like, it's weird, man.
He can make some nice plays on the left side of the infield. Like, there's definitely the defensive ability there. And for a guy that's 6'4", like, he moves pretty darn well. I think that the Tigers are just hoping that this guy can show even potential for a league average offense. Because if he's anywhere near that, I think you can see that big league role because of how well he picks it. And he did finish the season pretty well. But it was another guy that missed time with injury and stuff like that. So just getting a chance to make up for lost time and just see if the bat can continue to come along. But it's kind of been a slow burn with the bat.
It's crazy, man, because he had 20 homers and 34 bags and a 1058 OPS his draft year at Oklahoma. Like, I understood it. I got it. I thought it was a great pick by Al Avila. And it turns out it was not a great pick by Al Avila. I wasn't expecting it to be so hot then so cold offensively when it got to pro ball, but there were probably some deficiencies that I was just unaware of.
Yeah, the EV is just not totally being there, which was probably part of it, right? Where with metal, he's probably slugging a little bit more than what anyone would have expected with the wood, and I think that really started to shine through after he went pro.
Got you. Wilmer Flores on the pitching side was one of the more frustrating watches that I had this year because you know what's there. You know what's in the tank. And then I would see him, throw a clean third inning, clean fourth inning after a rehab. And I'm like, you walked the first four guys. It was so hard to watch.
After the just ridiculous track that he was on before, right? Where it wasn't just
innings eater. He looked like a pound the strike zone innings eater. And then all of a sudden he goes to the pen and he's throwing 99, but he has no idea where 99 is going. I don't understand where that came from.
And the velo fluctuations have been weird. And I do wonder if injuries are a part of this, right? Nagging issues, because he has had some arm issues over the last couple of years that have come and gone. And he missed a couple months this season. But you'd see that up to 99, and then you'd see him as low as 93, 94. And I think in the last outing of the year against Indy, he only went 2/3 of an inning. He was averaging 92. So it seems like a lot of it is health, but the fact that he's going out there to the fall league is encouraging. Clearly, they feel good about where he's at physically. But this was a dude that we were thinking, okay, he might be able to be a starter and a decent one. And the fallback would be a really solid reliever. And now we're just hoping he can be a reliever. I'm not going to give up on him because of what we've seen in the past. And I'm hoping that it has been, more of just the inconsistency health-wise and just not being able to really find that feel that he had. But it just has looked like a totally different pitcher.
Yeah. I don't really understand it. Are there other guys in this pitching group that you're fascinated by, or not really?
I saw Rainer Castillo at low A, and he's got definitely raw stuff. Like he can throw hard, he gets ground balls, and there's some late movement. But I also felt like there's just not that put away pitch when I watched him. I was like, hey, he get guys to, when he gets to early contact on the ground, that was great. But it's like, how are you going to put guys away? But this is a guy that could have a chance to start, is younger, so there's that intrigue at least. But other than that, I don't think I got much else on any other Tigers. Oh, sorry, I actually do. I have one other guy. I got CJ Weens. Is it Weens, you think? Wines?
I would go Wines.
Wines. I think Wines as well. 18 inches of vert from a 5'4" release height. You got my attention.
Cool. So, how hard?
In like the low to mid. And
Okay.
he's 6'3", 225. Like, this guy could be a big league reliever for sure.
Yeah, that works. That totally works. Okay, let's go to the New York Mets. We're going to get Jet, man. This is awesome. They send Jacob Reimer, and they send Jet Williams. They also send Drew Gilbert. We get Jet and Gilbert. And then the pitchers that they send: Sal Garcia, Noah Hall, Jonathan Pintaro, Dylan Ross, Ramirez. Jawilmy Ramirez?
I was looking at that. I don't know. I don't know how to say that.
We'll go with Jawilmy, and that is the most butchered first name ever. But Jet and Gilbert, this has to be exciting for Mets fans. This has been like the best 48-hour stretch for New York Mets baseball like ever.
Yeah.
But the fact that you get Gilbert and Jet Williams going out there after what Gilbert was on the opening day roster in AAA, got back in AAA. Jet was on the opening day roster in Binghamton, or was he in Syracuse as well?
I believe he was slated to start in double and then was hurt. I think he started in double and then got hurt, excuse me. So I think he played like the first 2 weeks, and then that wrist thing just really affected him. And then by the time he came back, played another 10 games in double, then that season ended. So they brought him up to triple, and he actually finished the season really strong.
Well, he looked good.
With some very good games in AAA. Final 6 games of the season, he compiled 8 hits, walked 8 times. And you saw the speed shining through too, and he hit some balls pretty hard. So I think was a really exciting finish, given that it was mostly a lost year for him, and now he can take that into the fall league, where I think he's going to be feeling good. Kind of shook the rust off with that wrist, and I think he's one of my candidates to have one of the biggest, I think, performances in the fall league. Drew Gilbert was banged up also, and he also really when he was on the field, and it still was a pretty sizable sample. I mean, we had 270 plate appearances here, where he very much struggled with secondaries. He hit fastballs contact wise pretty well, but I mean, it didn't look like Drew Gilbert. So I'm hoping it was more injury related. And all of a sudden, man, he's getting older quick. Like, he's 24 years old. So like, he's gonna be 25 by the end of next season, and you want to see him up at the big league level sooner rather than later. So I think we saw him live too in the backfields, and was a little bit underwhelming then as well. Like, I'm also struggling to figure out what his identity is as well, because if there's swing and miss on the secondaries, you know that he's not going to be a huge power guy.
Yeah.
He does, pull the ball in the air well, and that helps. Maybe he's either going to have to really lean into that, or he's going to need to find a way to be more bat to ball oriented, because he's a corner outfielder at this point. Like, they're trying him in center, but I think ultimately probably profiles best in a corner. Or if the defense can get a lot better in center, like, there's a lot of things that he needs to shore up, and he missed out on a lot of important reps. But I think we're also seeing why the Astros were kind of more willing to part with Gilbert than maybe a Jacob Melton. But I think this could be a great opportunity for him to kind of silence that and say, hey, I'm still good. I'm still a top 100 prospect, and I'm ready to go for next year, and I'm going to force my way up to the big leagues.
I really like the age thing that you bring up here, because pitcher life goes by quick, I feel like. And, especially when you have a Tommy John surgery, it's like all of a sudden Andrew Painter isn't 19 anymore. He's 21. And that's still awesome that he's at the level that he is, but he did that by, getting there in his age 19 season. We're going to talk about Mike Burrows in a moment. Like, Burrows is already 24. So much of the appeal was like, he's 22 in doing this, and he's doing it. He's just 2 years older. And, that's like a Tommy John thing. That is a, pitcher injury type thing. But you're right, man. Like, Gilbert was a college guy that just missed the majority of a season with an injury. And all of a sudden you're a year older, and you're not the 23-year-old in AAA anymore. You're the 24-year-old in triple, and you're essentially, a league average prospect at that point. And that's crazy to me.
So it puts the pressure on, like, you got to perform next year. It's not, it's no more of the I'm younger for the level or anything like that.
Store this mentally because I want to do this too. You mentioned like, philosophical. We'll do some of those off-season philosophical dives and what we've picked up on. I want to do an off-season episode dedicated to how each level of the minor leagues has gotten younger and more prospect oriented. I think that's made AAA worse. I think that's made AA worse because you have guys that are probably not double and AAA ready that are up there dealing with guys that have been in the big leagues. Like
Yeah.
I see way too many 22-year-old hitters up there seeing like a Michael Plasmeyer or seeing like a Valente Bellozo who are just going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy to me. So I do want to talk about that at some
Absolutely.
point. But we've got 3 more teams to go. And this one, the Pittsburgh Pirates also are in Scottsdale. They're Scorpions. They send Giovanni Planchert, a catcher, Sammy Ciani, the younger brother of Michael Ciani. Michael Ciani mentioned twice. The infielders, Tamar Johnson and Kervin Pichardo. And then the pitchers that they send, Brandon Bidois, Australian kid, Mike Burrows, who just made his debut in New York, Christian Curtis, who had a hell of a year in low A, Derek Diamond, and Eddie Yeen, who was part of that Josh Bell deal in 2020. Tamar, I think getting a month of looks at Tamar is going to be big.
I just want to know who are you? Like, who is Tamar Johnson? Because you cut the K rate down this year. That's great. But the EVs took a huge hit. So I just want to understand what the big league role is going to look like. And just being able to watch him in person, see the bat speed, see the way he's going about his ABs, and even just watching BP and things like that help me figure out what does he profile like role wise? Because I always thought, after we realized that it's not going to be hit over everything, it's going to be that slugging oriented second baseman that you pallet the whiff because he walks a ton. And this year there was a concerted effort to make more contact. That's great. He cut down on the strikeout rate, but the contact rate was still 67%. So as you get to the higher levels, like, you're going to strike out more again. And now you lost that slug. So like, he's going to need to get back into the slug a little bit more too, and hit the ball harder. I think that's going to be the focus out there. And, I just want to have a little bit more clarity on what his role will look like, and what kind of player he's going to ultimately try to be, because it's another guy that, yes, he's young, he's 20, but we also have a lot of ABs now at low A, high A, and then finish the year in double. Like, he's going to start the year again in double A next year, and we're going to need a little bit more of a direction here, I think, of what kind of player he's going to ultimately look like.
Yeah. Pichardo is interesting because Kervin Pichardo, if I'm not mistaken, was a pretty high money IFA guy that just hasn't really hit at any point.
I feel like that's also another candidate of players that get sent here. Hey, we paid a lot of money for you. It hasn't worked yet. Like, let's try to send you out here.
Right.
675 OPS this year. The EVs are above average, and he's about to turn 23, I believe, in the next couple weeks. So, yeah, it's a guy that probably needs to get hitting a little bit more sooner rather than later. He did get, played his games at double A for the most part this year. So, at least it was a little bit of a challenging assignment. But, I mean, yeah, he's going to need to slug a little bit more than 375 if he's playing mostly third base, put a little shortstop, but they're probably going to move him off there. It's mostly third base, second base. So, yeah, he's going to need to slug more.
Yeah, I think so. And then pitching wise, like, it'll be good to get Burrows more innings. Burrows looked really good over the weekend in New York. I don't know if you caught him, but he piggybacked off Skeens. So if you were watching, chances are you still had the TV on, realizing Skeens wasn't going to go out there for a third. And it was like, oh, like, we get a big league debut. This is fun.
I mean, you I know are very, very high on him. And I agree with you. Like, he's going to be pitching in innings for the Pirates next year, and I think a fair amount of them. I don't know what the role will be. Like, I'm sure there's going to be times where he's going to plug in and start. And I think a big reason why they were willing to part with a Quinn Priester, it was because I think they like Mike Burrows more, and also are excited about what he can do to plug in next year. But I also think he could be this piggyback guy. He could be a reliever. Like, he's definitely one of those candidates that could be a Swiss Army knife. But I think he could be a solid number 4 starter, number 5 starter for a lot of teams in the major leagues. So I'm just fascinated to see where they're going to use him. And, given that the rotation can get kind of crowded quick, of course, injuries always happen and things like that. And he'll probably be one of the first men up. But when the rotation is full, what's Mike Burrow's role look like? And how do they use him out there? Is he going to be starting games? I assume he will be, but maybe next year, it'd be a waste of bullets.
Yeah. I mean, book on Burrows, I feel like it's changed a little bit. When he first got to Indy in 2022, Burrows was it was fastball, slider, and the changeup was emerging. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not sure what the pitch-by-pitch performance looks like this year. Changeup seemed like the best pitch for him when he got back to AAA and was like there in earnest. I mean, he went to that changeup a lot, and I feel like it was very successful.
I mean, opponents hit 114 against it this year. So
okay, there you go. My eyes were
crazy whiff numbers. Crazy whiff numbers. And that slider is always played, and he gets good life on the fastball. It did not. That was the big thing though. Coming back, the fastball got hit pretty darn hard. So that's something to just improve upon. I think some of that was location. I think some of that's just not quite having it jump out of his hand the same way it was before. But when you've got the slider and changeup playing that way, like I think it's a great point there. Like that changeup really changes things for him because that gives him a really good third pitch and might even be a second pitch now. Then the slider is a really good third pitch.
Yeah. Do you have anything on Christian Curtis? Curtis was like really slinging it in Bradenton this year. 22-year-old at a 4.06 ERA, K'd 81 in 75 innings. Opponents hit 227 against him. Curtis, obviously an older guy for, being a low A pitcher full time this year, but I mean, he's 6'5" and like built optimally.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers were impressive. And I mean, when you got that build and he's got kind of the kitchen sink approach too, where it's fastball, curveball, cutter, changeup, slider. There's a lot of different ways he can attack you. The slider was great for him, and I wonder why he didn't throw it more. But having all of these assortments of pitches and having that big pitcher's body, and this is a candidate that I think they're going to want to get him out there and start, and see how he goes 4 or 5 innings and see which of the secondaries he gains more confidence in and everything. But I mean, he was sitting 95 all year long. He was 95.5 average fastball velocity. So he's got good stuff.
Yeah. 2 more teams that we got to go
through.
Oh,
Brandon Bidwa,
Aussie. Yeah.
Pretty nasty. Yeah. That's all I got. It's just pretty nasty. Fastball's got life. And that slider is disgusting. Disgusting. Opponents were 3 for 30 against it this year. Huge whiff numbers.
What's the listed height and weight on him?
I got him at 6'2", 160.
Yeah, 160 might be kind. Like that was the loosest fitting jersey I've ever seen on a reliever. But you're right. Like the fastball jumped out of his hands. It was very interesting to watch.
Yeah.
So Eddie Yean, by the way, just kind of like innings eater, has that, I think it's a sinker and it's a pretty heavy one. Like the K numbers are not going to be, K numbers are not going to be crazy, but he can turn it into a bowling ball and he can get some serious ground balls with that. 2 more organizations that we've got, the Giants and the Blue Jays. The Giants, of course, are sending Bryce Eldridge. That was the big story, I think, with the AFL rosters. But San Francisco also sends Bo Davidson. They send Charlie Szykowny, Polish, Scykowny, and then Marcus Johnson, William Kempner, Cale Lansville, Elijah Pleasance, and Tyler Vogel. Eldridge, and a little bit more Eldridge. Every time you get the opportunity to go and watch Scottsdale, you can sit down, you can see Tyrone Lorenzo, you can see Tamar Johnson, Jet Williams, and Bryce Eldridge.
I mean, that's the top of the list of players I'm excited to see, obviously, especially with how aggressively the Giants are pushing him. So just seeing if he can continue to handle that high-octane stuff that he's going to see. And, 6'7" guys, if he can turn around velocity and things like that, going to be quite exciting. Bo Davidson, some crazy numbers in terms of the production on the surface. Yeah, he was 21 years old at the start of the season. Another guy that turned a lot of early July birthdays here. Another July 5th birthday here. But, I mean, 1,026 OPS. I know it was low A and a little bit of rookie ball too. But this guy ran a 90th percentile exit velocity of 106 miles per hour. And he's pretty patient. Like I don't know much about him at all. So just to have those data markers and the production on the surface, even if it is at the lower levels, like I'm interested to just see who this guy is, especially with it being a left-handed swing as well. And then I don't have much on, I'm not even going to try to say Say Charlie's last name.
No, no idea.
I'm not. I said I wasn't going to try.
No idea.
But I mean, Eldridge is the big name to watch, and I think Bo Davidson could turn some heads. This is going to be a great test because again, another guy that played all low A. These arms that he's going to see are going to be better than what he saw at low A for the most part. How does he handle it? Because there is some lift there too.
Got you. Any arms that intrigue you or no? I don't know.
William Kempner's got some good stuff. I think could definitely, be a guy that stands out and maybe pitch his way into a big league bullpen. I always end up being surprised by one of these Giants arms, but in terms of going into it, nobody that I have a ton on yet.
Okay. Last but not least, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. Kendry Rojas is the only name that I know. Edison Paulino is a familiar name as well, who had some prospect intrigue with Boston. But the Toronto Blue Jays are sending Edison Paulino, Adrian Pinto, Peyton Williams, and then the 5 arms that they send: TJ Brock, Lazaro Estrada, Ryan Jennings, Jonathan Lavallee, and Kendry Rojas. Rojas is a lefty that does not light up the gun. Like it's what, 92 to 94, I want to say.
Yeah.
And it's pitchability lefty, or is there a certain pitch that jumps out?
I thought he was fantastic this year because it was pitchability lefty, but he got a lot more whiff this season. Cool. And I think the fastball ticked up a little bit, now averaging 93. Slider in the mid 80s is really good from this like loose, like horizontal, like high 3/4 release point, and it just darts from there. And then he found a splitter. Like the third pitch was kind of missing for him. He landed a splitter for a strike 60% of the time. I think this is the most underrated pitching prospect in the Blue Jay system. And I think he's one of the more underrated pitching prospects that we talked about on this episode. He missed a lot of time. I wouldn't say a late start to the season. He made 2 starts and then didn't pitch again until July. So missed a big chunk of the year. But when he came back, looked really solid. And in his last outing, averaged 94 with the fastball in a playoff game at Spokane, where he went 6 innings and punched out 9. So, yeah. I mean, he came back from that injury and looked really good. And he's 21 years old. Big big whiff numbers in the zone and filling up the zone. That's always a good combination. Gets a decent amount of ground balls. I'm pumped to see Rojas. I want to see, if he can carry that momentum and more importantly, just keep looking healthy and sustaining the velocity.
Cool. To be honest, Kendry Rojas and Paulino were the only 2 names that I knew.
Yeah, Paulino came over in which trade? Would that have been
I think it was the Danny Jansen.
Yeah, it would have been the Danny Jansen trade. He had a pretty nice year, and I think could kind of be that like super utility type. And if I'm not mistaken, also missed some time with injury as well. Only played 79 games this year, but can move all over. And I know earns really high marks for the makeup and just kind of the way he approaches the game. So for them, I mean, he was sitting 96, 97 when healthy, but then hit the IL on 2 different occasions this year. So, I mean, when healthy, we've seen that this guy could be fast tracked into that bullpen and put up plenty of zeros at AA when he was available to pitch.
Cool.
That's all I really got on the Blue Jays guys. But Rojas is another fun send though, and a lot it adds to the intrigue of arms that actually throw strikes here and mixing in some strike throwers.
Yeah, why not, man?
That'll do it for this episode and the Arizona Fall League roster breakdowns. We're going to be doing a lot more Arizona Fall League coverage, of course, getting ready to get out there in less than a week, but we will continue to highlight the top prospects out there, our live looks, try to get some interviews as well, and all that good stuff with our friends at Chinook. And of course, be sure to hunt me down because I will have some very good sunflower seeds for you. But as always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you later this week.